So when you're working on watercolour paper, you want to make sure that you're working on the textured side, not the smooth side. This is the area that will hold the most water. And you can see that I've applied water before applying any colour. This is that the paper's absorbent and my colours will spread, which is a technique that you can use when using wet materials. You can see now that I'm mixing my three primary colours ready to apply. So I've got yellow, blue and red. These are wet on the palette now. I'm adding extra water to make sure that my colours are going to travel, and as I apply the primary colours you'll see them starting to spread out from where I initially add them. And then I'm going to use a clean and relatively dry brush just to encourage the colours to come together a little bit more so that we can get a real sense of what happens when these colours mix. So you can see the secondary colours appearing there. Yellow and blue making green, blue and red making purple, and red and yellow making orange. And now I'm going to show you a slightly different way of doing this, where we're going to blend colours on a dry background from one to the next. And for this I'm preparing different shades of blue. So I've got a turquoisey blue, and then a blue and an orangey red and a more purpley red. And I start in the same way by applying the three main primaries, but then I'm going to start taking green blue to make my secondary green, and my orange red to make my secondary orange. This just gives it a bit of a smoother flow when you're doing this technique as opposed to the free mix. And it also gives you a little bit more control. I'm going to use the colour wheels that we made before to talk a little bit about basic colour theory and how we can make colour palettes to use in our work. So our primary colours are red and blue and yellow. And the secondary colours are the colours that are made when they're mixed together. So red and blue we saw from our free mix makes this purple. Blue and yellow we saw from our free mix makes green. And red and yellow we see from our mix makes orange. So there we have our primary and secondary colours. Now, to get our complementary colours, people talk about complementary colours quite a lot. A complementary colour is a colour that is opposite on the colour wheel to another colour. So they always come in pairs because you have to have something to be opposite. So if we place our pen like this, you can see that blue and orange are opposite each other. So they are one set of complementary colours. Purple and yellow are opposite each other, so they are another set of complementary colours. And red and green are opposite each other, and that's our third set of complementary colours. And this works with whichever one of these you use. I was just using our free mix one so that you can see that I'm not cheating. It's really the colours that are mixing, and it's really happening that they're opposite each other on the colour wheel. So how can we use this basic colour theory knowledge to make a palette? Well, you could choose to use only the primary colours. You could use only the secondary colours. You could choose a complementary pair. You could also choose to use what's called a split complementary. This is a little bit more complicated. So a split complementary, rather than going direct, so rather than going blue to orange, we would go blue to reddy orange and blue to yellowy orange. So you'd get two different shades of orange with your blue. And you can do this with any of the complementary pairs. So I could split yellow, so I could have an orangey yellow and a greeny yellow to go with my purple. So then you would have three different colours in your colour palette. Have a look at your colour wheel and pick a colour palette that you would like to explore for your next challenge. For my drawing of the rusty oil lamp, I've chosen to work on a rust orange background. And my colour palette is based around complementaries. So the complementary of orange is of course blue, the colour of the lamp. So in my colour set, I have the blue, I have black and white so that I can make tints and shades. Tints are with white, shades are with black. And I also have what I call a neutral brown, which can help me with my shading work. So let's see how this progresses. In this video, you're watching me working onto a rusty orange coloured background. Here I am just roughly sketching out my design. You can see that I've made some marks on my page just so that I've got a rough idea of the height and width of my object before I start fleshing out some of the shapes. And I tend to do this before I start adding in blocks of colour, particularly when working on a coloured background where I want some of the coloured background to start coming through. As you can see, when I apply the blue over the orange, it doesn't stay blue because obviously blue and orange mix and make this really dark brown black colour. So to get that bright blue, I have to work with the white and either apply the white on top of the blue or underneath, like you can see here on this side part, to get that blue shade to really pop out. You can see that in parts of this drawing I am leaving the orange to show through. This works because on my still life object I have the orange rust and I'm trying to use the orange background as a way of showing that rust without having to draw it in. And as you can see, these colours are really popping against each other because we're using the complementary palette. So we've got the blue and orange which are opposite each other on the colour wheel. And this means that when we use these colours together, we get a really strong impact. The black makes the colour darker or creates a shade, and the white creates a tint, a lighter colour. And when I'm working on the globe part here, I'm really wanting to think about the transparency. So I have these in the foreground and then I have these in the background. And you can see that I go over those so that I can then show that the glass is in fact in front of those parts. And here's the finished piece.